Birds are going to be the largest group of all of the reptiles. The birds, there happen to be about 10,000 known species, so there's quite a lot of them, and they are from the crocodilian lineage. So these do have a reptilian ancestor. The birds themselves have a number of derived characteristics. The best known is that they do have the ability to fly in many cases. And so many of the derived characters are going to have something to do with that flight ability. There will be modifications to their bones. They are going to have some special characteristics that are going to make them lighter weight. They'll have no urinary bladder. And there's also going to be just one set of ovaries, or one ovary, and the gonads will be small. There will be no teeth. And all of these characteristics together are going to help them to fly better because they are going to be lighter weight. Another characteristic is that they will be endothermic. By endothermic, this means that they will use their metabolism to regulate their body temperature. So if they're too cold, they can metabolize some food so that that will warm them up. They are going to have a 4-chambered heart. And they also have very good vision and very good muscle control. That, again, is going to be helpful for their flight ability. Now, saying all of this, there will be some birds that are not able to fly, but the vast majority of them will have that capability. If we look at a few of the adaptations that help them to be better at flying, one of them is that their bones are a little bit different from typical bones. So if you look at this picture here, you will see that their bones are what we call honeycombed. And by honeycombed, notice that there's lots of little holes in there. Those holes are just air pockets. They are going to make the bones a lot less dense. They will, as a result, be a lot lighter in weight. They also have feathers, which are going to help them to fly. And this whole flight ability is going to make them very good at escaping their predators if they are able to fly. In some cases, if we're talking about a bird like the eagle shown here, they're also going to be able to spot food sources a lot better than they would be able to if they were just limited to the ground. They're also going to be able to migrate great distances, and this way they will be able to exploit habitats and food sources that they wouldn't have been able to exploit otherwise. This bird right here is Archaeopteryx, and it's just a fossil. We don't have any living Archaeopteryx. But this was a very important fossil discovery because this is the earliest known bird. And it does have some unusual characteristics. So if you look at it, it does have feathered wings, but it also has claws here. And they're claws with digits. Notice it also has some teeth in it. We have a lot of characteristics here that we don't tend to see in birds today. Birds today do not have the clawed digits in the wings, and they also don't have the teeth. They don't usually have a tail as long as what we see here, and they certainly don't have a tail that has the vertebrae in it. It was able to fly quite well, but it wasn't able to take flight from a standing position. Which birds that we have today, they are able to do that. These birds that you see on this slide, this would be an example of some of those birds that are not capable of flying. These are what we tend to call the ratites. So these penguins, emus, ostriches are all examples of these birds that don't have this flying capability. So while most birds are able to fly, we do have some examples of some that aren't. And when you look at something like the penguin, one of the reasons why it's not able to fly is because it has special adaptations that help it to move through the water and swim instead. The last clade of animals is the mammals. The mammal clade is the one that's going to include Homo sapiens. There are about 5,300 known animal species that fall into this mammals clade. And if we talk about the derived characters here, the very first one we want to mention is the one that the name actually comes from. So this is the fact that mammals have mammary glands. Mammary glands are glands that are going to produce milk, which will be a food source for the developing young. We're also going to have hair that's going to help to regulate body temperature in mammals. These are going to be endothermic, so they will be regulating their own body temperature using metabolism. Most of them do have quite a high metabolism as well. They will have a 4-chambered heart. They're going to have a diaphragm that's going to help ventilate the lungs. And they're also going to have a larger brain. Now, how large it gets just depends on the organism that we're talking about. By the time we get to Homo sapiens, it's going to be quite large. And another last thing we want to mention here is that they do have differentiated teeth. So by differentiated teeth, if you just think about your own teeth, not all of those teeth are shaped the same because they do have different functions. So some of them are for cutting, some of them are going to be for mashing. And if you look at other mammals, they have the same type of thing. So they have some pointy teeth, they have some that are going to be flat teeth. They just have a variety there, which we don't see in the other groups of animals that have teeth. The true mammals, they were around by the time the Jurassic period was in place. Most of those were going to be quite small mammals, but by the time we got to the Cretaceous period, we were starting to see much larger body size in our mammals. And part of that may have had to do with the fact that the dinosaurs were going extinct. There were 3 major lineages of mammals that did evolve, and we're going to look at each one of those briefly. The first one is going to be the Monotremes, and then we'll also have the Marsupials and then the Eutherians. The Monotremes are quite unusual animals, and they're not as familiar to us because they're only found in a couple locations. These are found in New Guinea and then also in Australia, and those are the only places where they naturally occur. So if you've been there, you may have seen them, or you may have seen them in zoos, but you're not going to see them in the wild here in the US. And these happen to lay eggs. So here we have mammals that lay eggs, which is quite unusual. We have the duck-billed platypus here, and there's also some different spiny anteaters that fall into this category. Another thing that's unusual about them is that they do not have nipples. They do have the mammary glands though, but there's no nipples. So they have basically this secreting of milk that takes place, and then the young suck the milk off of the fur of the animal, of the mother. So these are the only animals that we know to do that. The rest of the mammals are going to have nipples that they can use for feeding their young with the milk that is produced from the mammary glands. The marsupials, as you probably already know, include the kangaroos, and then the koalas are also going to be part of this. Possums are going to be another example of marsupials. And these happen to have a pouch where the young complete development. Now, the reason that they need to have this pouch where the young are able to complete their development is because, if you'll notice down here, the young are born very early. So they're born before they've really completed all of their development. So they're going to be born young, very young, and then they're kept inside that pouch, carried along with the mother, so that they can complete their development. And once the development is completed, then they'll leave that pouch, and then they might just hop in there occasionally. In this case, the young are going to be nourished by a placenta. It's not going to be as well developed of a placenta as what we'll see in our third group of mammals, but there is a placenta there nonetheless. Our last group of animals is going to be the Eutherian mammals. And the Eutherian mammals, we'll see that some of them are very similar to the marsupial mammals that we have. This is going to be a case of convergent evolution. So if you look here, you can see some of the ones that are very similar to each other in their appearance. And they are similar because they happen to occupy similar niches in their environment. So they may have the same food sources, they may live in similar habitats and do similar things. So the sugar glider and the flying squirrel is an example that's cited quite often. Both of these animals are rodents. Both of them have flaps that they use to glide from tree to tree or glide in the air. But they came from an ancestor that did not have the flaps. So we know that those two cases of flaps did evolve independently, which would make it a case of convergent evolution. The Eutherian mammals are going to be the ones that have a more developed complex placenta. So we're going to say complex placenta here. This is the mammal group that includes most mammals, so it's the largest of all of the clades. And you can see a lot of different mammals listed here on this slide. These are known to have much longer pregnancies than the other groups that we looked at. And so since they have those longer pregnancies, that's going to enable the young to really complete their development while they're still in the uterus. So they're going to be in the uterus and they're going to be getting their nourishment from the mother through that complex placenta. This slide here is showing you a figure from your textbook. I know there's a lot of writing on this slide, but this is giving you an idea of all of the orders that are found in the mammal clade. So there's quite a lot of them, and for the rest of this chapter, we're really just going to focus on the primates, which is the clade or the order that's going to include Homo sapiens.